We are live.
Great.
I think you said to send it so on the floor.
Yeah. Welcome everybody to House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. This was intended to be a joint hearing, but our Senate colleagues are delayed, so we are forging ahead. We are going to be hearing today from the Agency of Digital Services about their 2026 annual report, their Enterprise Project Management Office dashboard, and any relevant FY27 budget requests. So we'll quickly introduce ourselves and then we'll turn it over to our witnesses. So I'm Representative Kathleen James from Manchester.
Scott Campbell from St. Johnsbury.
Graham Kleppner from Burlington.
Laura Sibilia, Wyndham 3.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham Windsor.
We're Howland, Rockland 4.
Richard Bailey, Lamoille 2. Michael Southwood, Caledonia 2.
All right. And let's see, who's joining us in the room?
John Kelly, ADA.
Denise Riley Hughes. Yes. Stacey Gibson Redfield, ABS.
Great.
Kate Slocum, ABS.
Super.
David Perry, Carson Group.
Great.
Lisa Godin, IT consultant with JFO.
Super. All right. I think that is the witness chair. Thank you for being here.
Record Denise Riley Hughes, I'm the secretary for the services. Also known as the state's chief information officer. Stacey Gibson Redfield with the Agency of Digital Services, I'm the chief program officer. And Kate Slocum, I am chief financial officer for the Agency of Digital Services.
Great. What order do you guys want to go in? I know our main goal was to follow up on your, the work that we passed in our bill last year about the annual report and the UPMO dashboard. And then I know you also have a budget request that we want to make sure we understand. So
we did a few slide synopsis of the annual report because there were a lot of pages in there. I think it reached well over 200. And those are both published on the agency's website. I believe that the legislature has also posted on your reports page as well. So those are both available there. When I say both, I think that we've separated out that low on our site, but we provided it as a single report to the legislature.
great. We'll have to find that on there. It didn't make its way to our committee yet. So we'll have to find it and get it posted on our website as well.
Perfect. John Kelly is sending it to both the House and Senate committees that will be here in the joint meeting today.
Okay, great.
And it's already sent, so it's in your inboxes.
All right, thank you.
So we can gloss over some of these, but this is a good opportunity to kind of go through what have we done in the last year. And we can just jump right in and then we can spend the bulk of the time on the project documentation as well as the finance side. So we have, when I joined the state 3 years ago, we've been focused on what is it that EDS does? How do we make it predictable, transparent, less complex, understandable, and we've focused on four core areas here, which is user experience. Ultimately, at the end, it's for Vermonters specifically. We also find that the user experience ends up being from the partner and state government agency side, so the users within the agencies that need to run state services using technology. And making sure that we've got that consistent user experience all the way around. I think that we've made some inroads there. We have a lot more work to do. But looking at the use of technology to be able to create that single interface, single front door, so that Vermonters can conduct the work that they need to do, either receiving services from the state or providing services to the state in a seamless way. Standards is ensuring that we're using the same frameworks across the technology stack, whether it's something that is a net new single solution for one department or whether or not it's a core platform. Predictability is really around knowing what it is that we are spending our money on, what we are buying, what it's going towards, and why we're doing it. And then the reducing complexity ties into all of that, but is also around reducing the technical debt, the security risk and the business risk associated with that technical debt. So being able to start looking at economies of scale and the overall cost of IT and whether or not we can reduce the per user cost of IT by sharing resources or making things available that are already in existence. So we've done this over the last, we've got that 3-year timeline that goes to a good visual on how are we doing this. So over the past year, we focused on our restructuring of our leadership team. So you notice that Stacy introduced herself as the Chief Program Officer. She is focused on strategic programs. We have realigned business architecture, enterprise architecture, and project management under Stacy's organization so that we keep greater alignment at the conception into execution stage of the work that we're doing so that we've got a place for that to be handed off to down the line. We've also moved our focus directors under core portfolios. So our field services are no longer supported as a dedicated to one department and one area, given that we're serving all the same Vermonters. We're looking at it from a technology portfolio perspective so that we know where things are connected, who has the access. So we take that concept of least privileged access, which is a security term, and we can now apply it across multiple systems so that if something goes down and it happens to be coming from, I'll make an example, DMV, that also connects to public safety, that may also connect to judiciary. And in the old model, that would have hit 4 teams. In the new model, that hits 1 team plus 1 branch. So we are able to have some shared responsibility and accountability right from within the structure of the agency. Service creation is another one. You'll find that in the core enterprise services. We've been talking a lot about core enterprise services, and we're going to, over the next year, focus really deeply around that in the field space, which is what was the embedded teams prior. It is now portfolio aligned. So what are the services that we're providing? What are the platforms that we have operating and running? And now we can really put a cost to that with some measures associated with it too, which is capacity, performance, and quality of those services. So when you're making decisions around whether or not you want to fund something, being able to have some measures to show if we have the right staff, if we're overstaffed, understaffed, if we're performing at a decent metric today, or if there needs to be room for improvement. And then the last one is a service-based budgeting. So we have come in here and the budgeting model has been very complex, and I've heard every time I come to testimony, especially when we're talking around the cost of IT, that there's always a comment around why is this so complicated, it doesn't have to be. But looking at it as a service-based cost modeling, it includes the cost of people and the resources, which is where you get that capacity metric from. But it also includes the cost of the technology. In the old model, what we were doing was budgeting for a SKU and a product, but we were forgetting that there were a lot of resources and there were a lot of adjacent technologies tied to that. And then in being able to recover for the cost of that and go back an agency, there is an opportunity for dispute when you don't want to pay for a SKU or you didn't ask for that resource, but we knew that it was needed in order to be able to deliver the service. So going under a service model, it holds the agency of digital services a lot more accountable to delivering quality service. And it opens the door for the consuming agencies to be able to understand how we're delivering on that service and not just one myopic piece of that environment.
Secretary Riley Hughes, just a quick break to introduce our Senate colleagues. I know you guys were on the floor. We felt like we should go ahead, but this is the first slide. So,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
So
that's
if
good.
you want to introduce yourselves, yeah, for the
Sure.
record, yeah.
I'm Chair of Institutions, Wendy Harrison. I represent the Wyndham District, and we're going to have 4 of us here.
Great.
So when you do come to our committee, we'll just repeat what you have said now.
Yeah, Tom John Benson, I represent the Orange District.
Thanks, Senator Benson. Okay.
Perfect. This slide hasn't been updated, which really goes to show that we've been consistent in our messaging. When I issued this in 24, this is our 5-year plan. When we have a dramatic change or when we achieve the breakthrough indicators, we'll make sure that that's noted in there, but this is part of the requirements on our reporting. The report is highlighting some of the successes so that any of the readers can take away what is it that you did over the last year and did you do it well? So this highlights a couple of areas where we focused around operational improvement, resource efficiency, and overall supportability of the services that we deliver. So on our enterprise application space, we focused around being able to report accurately on uptime. We did use some AI technology in order to rationalize some of the legacy technology that had been sitting outside of the cloud and hosted data center, and we moved it into the standard data centers that we have, which allowed for a much quicker response time. It took legacy apps and gave them a little bit extra life as well, and allows us a greater uptime than we could if a server was sitting in a closet somewhere. The service desk is really tracking the metrics around the supportability of the 11,000 employees that we work with and with the efforts around return to office. The last thing that we wanted was for folks not to be able to connect and do their job when they were sitting in their seats. So this team worked really closely on that work, as well as getting everybody's machine on a current version of the operating system, which has improved our ticket volume, but also our resolution time on those tickets. I think that both of the committees know that we have a network modernization project working as a precursor to some of the site connectivity and some of the deployment of the major systems within that network modernization. We went ahead and touched all of the state office buildings under a wireless first initiative to make sure that everybody had Wi-Fi connectivity in a way that was easily accessible for them. This was an effort that we took on starting in 2023 after the first year of floods. And that was able to be completed, which also improved their access to the network. So we are tracking a 99.9% uptime on that.
Are you doing questions?
Yeah, we didn't talk about, we usually do them as we go.
Okay, so do you consider the correctional facilities to be offices? Because they've had issues with.
So they do not have Wi-Fi today as part of their core service. It is something that we have been working with them on, but there are quite a few items that we would have to take into consideration because they don't follow the typical model of a state office building. So right now they have wired connections, and we have worked at improving some of those wired connections as well. There are other Wi-Fi services working within those facilities, which is the inmate network. They have their own network with their own devices as well. And so our networking team is working with those providers and corrections on that.
Great. So we'll talk more about that when you come to our committee, because
core enterprise services, I know that you've talked with us quite a bit on as well. And as we really dig into both the budget going into 27 and the reporting around the performance of core enterprise services, it's hopefully going to become expected and predictable so that it's not misunderstood by any means. But I will tell you, this is probably one of those areas where our partners in state government will share that they didn't realize that this was the cost of the IT that they were consuming. And that is feedback that we've received as well, but we're working closely with all of the business offices on that. And then on the field side, that kind of speaks for itself. It just highlights a couple of successes. jump. We've talked a lot about security in both of your committees as well as in JITOC. One of the things that's important to highlight too, when we look at the work that security is doing, these are not numbers that we would have been able to pull 5 years ago. But we put a lot of focus and time on being very focused and intentional about security. So we are monitoring over 350 billion security events. So security events is anything happening on the network across the course of a year. So this is transactions, it's people, it's logins, it's access, it's problems, it's issues. And so we've been able to leverage AI through the platforms that we have in place. And you can see that based on the numbers, the 3,000 plus work days that we have saved through being able to be very focused around the investments that we've made. We've also not asked for additional staff. So this team has stayed the same size for years. And they've been able to do this. I think that we are at peak capacity though for our security team today.
Yeah, Rep. Sibilia.
Sorry, Secretary Riley Hughes, I'm trying to call this up. Do you have a date on here? So the response time reduction from 37.3 days to 3.5 days?
Yes.
From, what is that, from when to when?
This was from the 2024 to 2025, so early 2024. The CISO who joined the state, John Toney, was tracking that our tickets were open for 37 days. This is any type of ask that comes through that they're managing. And so their resolution time is 3.5. So this could be something, an alert that is, I think this is spam, or I don't have the right virus updates on my system. This is any ticket that they would have coming in.
So if we were to go back to last year's report, would we see that 37.3 day
I don't
response time?
I don't think we were tracking that.
Okay,
So we're tracking this as a new metric as part of those performance measures that I was talking about.
okay. And what do you attribute that? Did you say AI?
I
The reduction?
attribute it to focus on performance, focus on criticality of need, and a highly skilled system and team.
So change of staff. Okay, sorry. Sometimes I need it a little more plainly spoken.
There's a lot more that goes into it, but there's.
Yes, yeah, okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
So we do talk about data in NEI a lot. This is an area that we pretty proud of at ADS. We work closely with other states. We were the first state to have a director of AI. And we have grown that intentionally around the enablement use, but also the intentional use of AI so that we're tracking everything. And you'll see that in the report as well. We did go ahead and launch a ChatGPT as ChatGPT was coming out. We needed to be very cautious and careful about misinformation or exposing information that shouldn't have been, because I think we've had a couple of private sector companies that have some public backlash by putting protected code data into these commercially globally available systems. And so ChatGPT was a internal, more secure system for the state to use. And it is growing by the months. So we now have over 700 employees actively using it on a weekly basis, about 15% of the workforce, which is it's actually pretty impressive when we look at the whole workforce using a single platform like this. 50% is a bigger number for us. So we've reduced that cost of the service down to about $1.
I asked a question.
Yeah.
ChatGPT, what are state employees using it for?
They're using it for sometimes email responses. They will say, I need to respond to somebody. They'll use it for editing a document. They will use it for interpretation, but everything requires the user to make intentional prompts to it and decipher the information And so one of the recommendations that we make in that, the code of ethics is that if you're using AI, disclose that you're using AI, but there's gotta be a human in the loop.
And where do its brains come from? Where do its brains come from?
It's hosted as part of the OpenAI system under Azure.
Thank you.
It is a pretty low cost solution. We're looking at, I think it's costing the state about $300 a month for that many users. We're trying to be economical about it.
Great.
And BCGI, I think that I would expect that everybody in this room has heard a lot about maps. And so BCGI, I feel like they may be having their 15 minutes of fame here, but they have done some incredible work on the data that they ingest under their system, and they've been doing this for years and years. It just so happens to be really relevant right now in the digital age, where now, as you're looking at all of the work that the state is doing, to be able to visualize it in a way that they have presented under maps has been really valuable across every one of the agencies, legislature, and the Vermont public. And so they have increased now their direct hits to about 1 billion map requests, which is more than they've ever had before. And so you can see the statistics up there. We have these screenshots and some more data and some more narrative within the annual report to show. But this is the only division or only team, they're under the data and AI division within ADS that is public facing. So they work really closely with towns, municipalities, with boards and commissions and with agencies, but the Vermont public overall.
No, they're great. They're wonderful and they're really responsive. And that's separate from the ANR
Right.
data, right?
Correct. They do a lot of the work for ANR though. So that is part of where, when we start looking at core enterprise services, having BCGI be considered a core service that everybody uses allows, although ANR may be inputting the data, AOT may want to use that data. And so if it's shared access and shared resources, then it lowers the individual cost of those services. I'm not going to get into the systems inventory, but we do have that fully published in the report, which is required. So we've increased our deployed AI systems quite a bit. We almost seem to be doubling it year over year. So we may look to improve how we are providing that inventory so that it still meets the requirements of the detail, but that it's not 25 pages of the report. These are just some examples of what we have pushed out. And I'm going to hand things over to Kate because this is part of our finance data and it gets into some of the budget conversations. So I would ask, I'd ask both chairs whether or not, do you want to do the finance stuff now or jump to the project and then go back to finance?
Representative
Yeah, can we just,
Question?
can we just go back?
Yeah.
to this one? So Secretary Riley Hughes, you are kind of consolidating this information
Yes.
for the purposes of taking up less.
I'm consolidating this information because it is 250 plus pages. And I want to make sure that we create some highlights to at least cover at a high level the first time that we testified on
Yep.
the report and the budget. And interestingly enough, we did use AI to help generate this, which is tagged in the back of the presentation.
So I wonder if you, and I don't know if this is the time, Madam Chair, but I just kind of want to flag, I don't kind of want to, I would like to flag here that we are seeing really explosive growth of AI. And I would expect throughout state government. And as we talk about a lot, you know, we have, your job is to run the government. Our job is to provide oversight, make sure you're doing a great job. And how, if we are kind of consolidating all of this, how is the legislature able to do their job? So I think that's a very big question, Madam Chairs, but it's one that I think is very important for us to understand. And I don't know if we should have maybe an additional session on this.
Well, so looking at the testimony that we're taking today, the annual report, which is a big document, I assume we're summarizing here. I'm sure folks will have follow-up questions in the weeks to come on the annual report, which I haven't read yet. I mean, we just got it. And we did this on purpose. We wanted to bring you in right away, so thanks. The EPMO dashboard, I think, is going to be really important to look at because that was something that we focused on a lot in the bill we passed last year. And I want to make sure that we talk about the budget because we anyway have to look at your budget request and write a budget letter soonish. So why don't we, since we have the Senate here and maybe we should talk about the EPMO dashboard or keep moving through the annual report, talk about the EPMO dashboard because I know you want to show us some stuff. And then let's just make sure we leave enough time for our budget conversation. Otherwise, we'll have to have you guys come back in like. Okay. Does that sound good?
So will we come back to that at another session, maybe?
Yeah, not today.
That's my question.
And this might be a good time for the other two senators to join us. You don't have to, but I just want, okay, all right. So there are four of us here. Okay.
I'll introduce myself again. I'm Stacy Gibson Granville. I'm the Chief Program Officer for the Agency of Digital Services. And one of my areas of responsibility is the Enterprise Project Management Office and how we report information to the legislature. So what you see here is just a summary of changes we've made in both our annual report and on our dashboard to try to make things a little easier for people to understand and consume information. We've updated our project status categories, so they're a little less verbose and easier to understand as far as like, what does the color green mean? And what does the color yellow mean? And what does the color red mean? So essentially green means things are good. Yellow means there's some risks that we're keeping an eye on and trying to take courses of action to remediate. And red are things that, our team may not be able to solve for. And we need to bring in other members of state leadership to help us either more resources or some kind of negotiation with a vendor or more funding. So that's essentially at a high level, how you define status and risk on projects. And we have changed our external dashboard page to reflect these definitions. A little easier for a Vermonter, a citizen, if they're interested to understand what it is the data is. Okay. So currently, one thing I will just say, our annual report is a snapshot in time. So the data represents a specific day in December when we pull down all the information and then it takes about a week to create the report. And now it's been a few weeks since then. So things are going to change on the dashboard compared to what's in the annual report. So I just want to remind people that new projects come in, other projects might close, things like that happen. And so the data's being refreshed on the dashboard every week, whereas the annual report's done once a year.
Right. Thanks for clarifying that because I'm on the, I'm on the dashboard right now and it's already,
Yes.
it's already shifting. So
Yes.
clearly it's dynamic.
Yep. So as of the time of the report, we had 48 active projects that were being managed by the project management office. 68% of them were meeting all of the expectations and on track. 25% had risks that were being proactively addressed. And there were 7% that required leadership intervention, which I think was like 4 or 5 individual projects that led to that percentage.
And those are success metrics. I know that you're not saying it, but that is one of the lowest risk ratings of projects that you would see in this, in a state government space. It's quite impressive.
Thank you. So, do you, weight the projects? Like if one project is 5 million and another one is 500,000, you probably don't have any 500,000. But do you weight the bigger projects?
No, the risks are defined at the project level, so it doesn't define, it's not weighted as far as like magnitude of cost or anything like that. So you can have a project that's, for example, the DMV core modernization project, which closed in 2025, was a green status throughout pretty much its entire existence. It might have dipped into the yellow for a little bit, when they ran into some complexities around, shared data and information with public safety. But for the most part, it was green, and that was one of the most expensive projects on our dashboard compared to a CRM project that might be really struggling, because of the type of business process that we're trying to implement. And has some significant risk, and the costs are much lower. Like you could have the DMV core project at 50+ million and another project at 8 million, and that $8 million project is in the 7% risk category.
Okay.
So. So another new thing we did this year, so last year, you'll remember in the annual report, we included a chart for budget variance, which basically just represents the difference between projected and actual expenditures. This year, we also were able to add schedule variance, which measures the difference between planned and actual progress. So whether or not a project is moving ahead of schedule, on track, or behind schedule. So that's a new feature that you'll see in the annual report. Each project has one of each of those charts. So you'll see a schedule and a budget variance for every project in the annual report. And what this offers us is an ability to kind of look forward a little bit and see how projects are trending. Because if we can look back and see how they've been trending, that kind of gives you an indication of we're running into an area where we might want to spend a little time understanding what's causing, a schedule to kind of go off track a little bit. And then I think we have one more. So these are the projects we completed in 2025. We closed 20 projects in the last year, which is significant. And some really, important ones like the AOT DMV core system replacement that completed in December. I like to call that one of our bigger success stories just because of the fact that it really gives some improved experience for the Vermonter coming in and getting their licenses renewed or their registrations renewed. And then the AOT construction management system is another big one that closed. There are a few there in the AHS space, some internal ones like the Windows 11 upgrade. I won't go through the whole list, but just to say that it's really great to see so many different agencies seeing some success in their project delivery and closing out some of these projects successfully. Many of which were on time, within budget, and within scope. So. And then one more, JK.
I would say before you get into the dashboard, one important thing to note that we didn't highlight at the level that we really should have in the annual report is that Stacy, along with some key members of her team, worked with other agency leaders and other elected offices to come up with almost a pre-project. They're calling it intake, but it's a business architecture. Almost like a business plan to come up with pre-projects so that it sets projects up for better success. But as we're starting to look at these metrics, they can't be considered once you already have a project in its contract signature execution stage. It really needs to be set up for success early in that process. And so the intake, we've now taken 15, 16, 20 projects through this, or 20 conception-based projects through this, which also brings the business agencies to a level of understanding around whether or not they have all the right information to make it successful. So that that's not something that is an afterthought after a project has already started and we don't miss the mark on projects. So that is one of the things that came out of 2025 that has been behind the scenes, but very, very valuable to the overall project success. And
across every agency.
Yeah, you'll see it in the ADS annual report. There's a page basically about the changes to my office, which expanded basically the project management office into 3 business units. So we brought the enterprise architecture team over from the chief technology officer into the program office. And then we created a new unit called the business transformation office. And what's really exciting about the business transformation office, as the secretary was just explaining, is one, we bring together members of the business, partner agencies, our agency, including members of core and field services, to sit down at the time that the business comes to us and says, hey, I have a need, I need something built, or I need help solving for something. I have a new policy and I don't have a system for it, and I need to be able to track data or whatever, or build a workflow around it. So they'll fill out a very simple form online that will come into our office. We then have, right out of the gate, a meeting with them and our team to sit down and really get an understanding of what it is exactly they're trying to accomplish. Justin Kenny from the Chief Performance Office is also a part of this board, and alongside of him, we work with them on defining their outcomes. What is the outcome that you're looking to achieve? How can we work together to ensure that whatever solution we bring forward is actually going to help you achieve those outcomes? And so what we've done is we've flipped the narrative so that we're not coming to you and saying, I have a technology solution for you. We're waiting for them to come to us, get a better understanding of what their needs are, and then working together with them alongside of us, defining what our path forward is. And it can go in one of 3 directions. It can go down the direction of a business process improvement effort where they don't need any technology. They may have all the tools that they need. They just need members of my team, business analysts, business architects, enterprise architects, to help them define their business process or fix and adjust their business process to meet their new needs. Or we might determine that they do need some technology and we already have something internal, which means we don't have to go through procurement. We can look at our field and core services team to come in and sit down with them. It might be a new SharePoint site. It might be an automated workflow on an existing SharePoint site. It could be anything. But then working with them to understand, will this work for you, right? And then that goes into an operations phase.
If we have time, could you quickly, on the dashboard, I don't know if John can pull it up, but we can see it well enough. Can you just remind us which columns are new and which columns changed?
Yeah, from last year?
Yeah, from last year.
So the changes we made to the dashboard last year was, we put in the project start date, which is that very old IT ABC form initial date that we received a request. This process I was just describing to you is going to change that a little bit. But that project start date is the very first time anybody's come to us with a request and we start filling in all of the information on the ABC form. The implementation start date was there before, but we redefined it last year to be the date that we've signed a contract with a system implementation vendor and started what we call the execution phase. So from project start date to implementation start date is all of the planning work that I was just describing, where you're defining outcomes, you're writing an RFP, and you're going through the procurement process. It's not until you get to implementation start that you're actually sitting down with a vendor and building something. Then we had initial, I believe it says initial completion date and estimated completion date, same thing. In the early stages of a project using the ITBC form, when you have that project start date, you have an initial completion date, which is like our best guess based on the limited information we have is that it's going to take us a year to do this, right? And then so often what happens is you go through an RFP process, you get into a contract negotiation with sound ridiculous, but can sometimes those contract negotiations alone can take 2 to 3 years just to get through because of all the back and forth with legal counsels and red lines and that type of thing. So the estimated completion date is based off of the contract negotiation. So both your implementation start date and the estimated completion date, the 4th column, are more based on the reality of a contract you've negotiated with a vendor that gives you a better sense, because in the contract you have a term, a start date and an end date. So you're a little more confident on those dates at that point.
And I think the rest of it. I can't really read it either from here. I think there's also
Current cost
Cost.
versus estimated.
yeah, same thing. So, in the old process with the ITABC form, again, we do a pretty rough estimate based on, again, limited information, no contract with the vendor yet, like we think this is how much it's gonna cost. And usually those early estimates are based on resourcing because we don't necessarily know what we're procuring yet. Or if we think we know, we can kind of guess based on another project's implementation cost or whatever the industry is quoted for costs at the time. You might have done a request for quote or an RFI also to inform some of that. But again, you're not gonna get into the real initial estimated costs or the current estimated costs until after a contract's been negotiated and you know how much that system implementer is gonna charge you. The other thing about the contract piece is not only do they tell you what they're gonna charge you, how much this thing's gonna cost for them to build it, but you have a timeline because the contract has that term, which gives us more information to estimate resource costs. So if I know based on the contract, the system implementer is telling me it's gonna take 18 months to deliver this product, and it's gonna cost me $3 million, then I can say, all right, 18 months, I need a project manager, I need a business analyst, I need a security analyst, I need an enterprise architect. Whatever else you have, like IT operations support, IT manager, for example, that's in the current space and needs to help with whatever the new thing is, you can then better estimate those costs. And so that's what's baked into the current implementation cost estimate.
Brooke Klippner.
Are the technology and your processes evolving too fast for the past history data you have about how long projects took and how much they cost to be useful guides to current?
Yeah, I mean, I would say technology is moving fast, inflation is a thing. A technology you would have procured 5 years ago is gonna cost you probably double this year, just because of the cost of everything today, right? Like the technology solution providers are not looking to make things more cost effective, they're looking to make more money off the products that they're selling. So absolutely, I think the look back is not as it's not as helpful as it once was. There was a time when you could look back 2 years and feel pretty confident that your costs are gonna be within the ballpark, and I would say now that that's changed drastically.
Is that same true for timelines?
I would say the speed to delivery in some cases may be increasing. So you could see shorter timelines than what you would have seen before. Obviously, we're not building big, large monolithic mainframe systems anymore. Everything's a COTS product, cloud-based software as a service, for example. Like when you're buying a software as a service, you're likely not building a net new thing. You're using a service that they already provide elsewhere and just configuring it to meet your business needs. That's a lot quicker turnaround time than building something from the ground up. It's like, you know, it's similar to like buying a house, and I don't mean this to be overly simplistic, but it's how my brain sometimes rationalizes things. If I'm looking to just, expand my household, I'm not necessarily gonna look for a whole brand new foundation, because I've already got a foundation. I just need to add another column to it perhaps, or another room to it. I may not even need to adjust the foundation. I could just add another level to the building, whereas, if you're looking to buy a brand new house with a whole new footprint, you're gonna spend more on that, right? Because you're building everything. So the software as a service can give you that little piece that I just want to expand versus, those big monolithic systems. A lot of people aren't procuring those anymore.
I think that what we're also seeing too, when I joined the state 3 years ago this week, we
Happy
had,
anniversary.
120 something projects. So we're less than half that today. So as far as the volume of activity, we've seen a little bit of a downtrend in that volume. But these are anecdotal trends. The information that you're seeing in the data that Stacy's team is collecting is done really manually.
Oh, very.
So that asset trend analysis that we would want to look at to see cost over time
we don't have the resources today to do that. These are not IT investments under ADS supportability. These are IT investments for specific services where we are replacing systems or we're adding new for something that never existed before.
Yeah, every data element you see on this dashboard has a manual intervention behind it. So the project management tools that we have require a project manager to key the data in. There is no automation, none. It is all very manual. And sometimes they have to use more than one tool to do their jobs. So they'll use a tool that we use to collect the data that helps us to create the reports in the dashboard. But then they may use Microsoft Word or PowerPoint to actually share status reports to the business user, right? Because it has a better look and feel, you can format things better. The other drawback to the tool that we have today, with your permission, is like, it's extremely labor intensive to create this dashboard. It takes 2.5 hours of a data analyst's time to run the job that updates the dashboard from our project management tool. And without getting
For areas of improvement.
so it's very manual intensive. It does take a lot of time. I just want to say that I'm extremely proud of my team because of the amount of work that they do put into it. And we try very hard to provide as much transparency and visibility as we can in the data that we do collect. But we do have to put a lot of thought into it. Making adjustments to the dashboard isn't like just adding a column. There's a lot of work that has to go on behind the scenes to make it work.
How often are you running this dashboard?
Every week. So the PMs have to have all their data in by 6 o'clock on Friday evenings, and the dashboard updates Monday mornings.
I'm very interested in procurement, and in the dashboard, it has lines for what it's costing to get to the project, the implementation. But then I don't see information on the cost, the ongoing cost to the state of the service. And this I'd like to talk about this more in our committee when you're there, but I would suspect that there are trade-offs that you can make, like higher implementation, maybe lower cost, because typically in the state, we would have something for years and probably longer than we would want it, right? I mean, our systems, we're not super, fast at getting new systems. So is there an advantage, or can we plan in a way that the state has lower ongoing costs because we know that those will probably be longer term than we expect? I mean, we have systems that are 20 years old, 30 years old, right?
So if 60 years old.
Okay, there you go. So I just don't want to assume that we're going to have 5-year updates.
Big conversation, and really what we're talking about is system life cycle or service life cycle. So the work that we've done in getting core enterprise services launched, moving our staff under a portfolio-based model sets the stage for what you just described. Because if you look at the stages of a life cycle, we're talking about our intake, project management, execution, and go live. Getting up to that point is what you are seeing us tracking. Once we get to go live, where's the tracking from there?
Yeah.
Is it just something that you hand off to the business, or is it something that we now look at as a field service that has a service-based cost to it for what we call it M&L, so maintenance and operations. The maintenance and operations isn't just the cost of buying a SKU for a software product. It's the total service cost of how many people does it take? Is it performing? Does it have uptime? Are we having problems? Is it delivering the service that the agency needs it to do? Is it meeting the public's need? Is it meeting your need? And so that's the stage that we're getting into starting in 27 by really putting some serious focus on the field services side. When we were created, April will be 9 years. The embedded field model that we absorbed when ADS was created never changed. meaning that more than 50% of the departments across state government did not have field resources. So moving under a portfolio model opens the opportunity for them to have access to those field services so that we're not paying a ton of money to have a partner or a non-state resource do something that we're already doing for another department over here. So we are very much looking at this under a microscope for technology services that we provide.
Good. And yeah, so I'll leave it there for now, but that's a big conversation.
It's a big conversation.
Okay.
And it's taking time, and
Right.
change is hard for some people, and others, they love it. Taking time. So I think that's the end of the EPMO piece. If there are any specific other project-based questions.
On the agency of human services, I see that has a massive amount of work to be done in there. Will all those different modules that are in there gonna be able to talk to one another?
That's part of the work that we're doing on that business transformation as well as enterprise architecture being under Stacy's division. So that we do have a connective tissue where we can. Sometimes it's federally mandated, so if the funding is coming from a particular federal source, we do have to make sure that we create containerization around that so that the cost of the service is independent of others. But all of those projects have a level of integration, planning around them.
So, and we can ask about specific projects.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a very
Let's just
simple question, right?
take a beat here. So we have to be on the floor at 3.
Yeah.
How long should we save for your budget presentation and or should we reschedule it?
I can
I
talk
think 15
fast.
minutes.
Yeah, I can do it in
Okay.
15 minutes, but there's questions.
Great.
So this is just about the report. So I'm looking at the project inventory. And I know that we have a hearing scheduled on the child welfare information system. So I
Friday.
don't want to get deep into that. My question is, when I'm looking at the budget risk schedule scope, why are there no red marks there?
For CC West?
Yes,
Because it is still in contract negotiation stage, so it hasn't started.
thank you.
I have a simple question too, which I don't think you've addressed. Some of these have blanks in the project inventory. And and one of them in particular that I was looking at was the integrated eligibility and enrollment.
Just like CC was, it is in procurement, so we don't have all the data to support the dashboard currently.
A good indicator is that if there is no implementation start date, it means it hasn't started, so there's gonna be other blanks in there. If there's an implementation start date and you're still seeing blanks, then we could either have a data.
We could have a data
issue
anomaly.
that
Yeah.
it didn't
Okay,
come over.
Come over. It's
well,
a pretty complex query, so that is always possible.
So that's another one I would say is open RFP stage.
I mean, that's IE&E has
Yes.
been going on for, I don't know, a decade. Millennium. Yeah.
There's a noticing project that is active, and I believe that is looked at separately, and that's in
That's a
the
separate
dashboard.
Okay.
Yeah, just one other follow-up. You are looking at systems that have already been created and just need minor or modifications.
Some of them, yes.
We don't have to build everything from scratch.
No, correct.
We
I mean,
would like to not have to build everything
Right.
from scratch, yeah. And that's probably why you're seeing 52 projects and not 120. Is that being able to maximize the investments that the state has already made in some of these bigger systems. We're having conversations right now with tax, DMV, and labor as we start looking at, they are all engaged with the same technology provider for their massive business systems. And there is an opportunity for us to create a unified support model so that we are not recreating individual independent support, for each one of them.
Thank you.
All right, budget. I know we're asking folks to think a little bit differently and it is uncomfortable for some people, but when we look at the funding source and the cost to Vermonters, it's really important that we can reuse and reduce overall cost if we don't look independently at everything and we start looking more collectively at things.
So again, for the record, Kate Slocum, Chief Financial Officer for the Agency of Digital Services. So you may recall from past years, as we spoke to the committee about our recovery structure under our budget, and it was really complex. You know, there was demand to it, there was allocation to it, there was timesheet, and that's what you're seeing on the left side. What we have done is work really collaboratively with finance and management to simplify this. And to bring some consistency and some predictability to our budgeting process, as well as our budgeting outlook for the future. What we've been able to do is define this into 3 areas: core enterprise services, agency solutions, and bespoke. And I've said bespoke before. So as a reminder, bespoke is really those services or products that are unique to a customer or agency. The agency solutions are enterprise solutions that we offer to customers across the enterprise, or they're for professional services of our staff. Project management is one of those, enterprise architects, system administration. Core enterprise services is the exciting part, and that are the services that all of the enterprise consumes one way or another. Things like network connectivity, security, cybersecurity needs, the help desk, GIS, we talked about that earlier. Business office, IT procurement, services that are necessary to provide a uniform IT solution across the enterprise.
And for agency of digital services being an internal service agency, one of the things that has been a little troubling for me is that we can sit down and have a conversation about budget, but it's very challenging to decouple budget from expenditure to recovery. And that adds to the confusion if we don't look at the full transaction life cycle. I say use the word life cycle again, but the full transaction, it's an entirety. So you've got a budget, you're going to spend the money, but then as an internal service agency, we're going to have to charge people. And so the reason why this looks so complex is it's the easiest way to describe that out of the 5 categories that you see in budget requests prior to this year, the color that's circled correlates to the color over the new model, which is core enterprise services were recovered under 4 different categories, meaning that you never had a single cost being able to be recovered under the same color bucket, funding source. And that adds to the complexities because how do you fully recover for everything? So bespoke, you can see represented costs under timesheet, SLA, and bespoke. In agency solutions, it could be under telephony, timesheet, SLA, and sometimes bespoke too. So we need to make sure that we couple budget, expenditure, and recovery in the same space so that you know what it is, you know what's going in and you know what's going out, and that we balance a book of expenditure at the end of the year and have a 0. And that's what you're going to get into a little bit next. Sorry, I wanted to explain that so that you know why all those circles were there.
So this next slide shows you how those 3 recoveries are broken out. And it's really the funding structure behind those recoveries. In the past, we had a lot of this lumped together, and working with finance and management, we have broken this out. So the green reflects funding of special funds, general funds, and some internal service funds, whether it be financial management fund or the CIT fund, which was our lion's share of recovery in the past. The purple represents those core agency solutions and the enterprise offering formerly known as SLA. So those are really the services that, the agencies require, but they are, they are unique to them, but they are an enterprise offering, so.
So a good example would be server workload in the cloud. So we're not gonna charge DMV for server workloads that are consumed by labor. So labor gets to use or get charged for their own compute, but the existence of that data center being there is the core enterprise service. They just pay for their own compute. So that mitigates that that not being able to recover at the individual SKU level. Now we're recovering at the consumed service level. So it's still going to be a net, but we don't have to charge agencies who are not consuming those at their own scale.
Yeah.
That's a good way to describe it.
And we changed how that went last year, right? So that we're not AA.
Well, we'd actually like to see some of those drop over time, and no, there was not a big PAA. ADS didn't have an APA request this year. So the $15 million was because if you remember, the
Yeah.
Google was recovered a year in arrears.
Yeah.
Meaning that they could spend the money this
Yeah.
year, but we don't bill them until next year.
Which is why it showed up in the BAA.
Right, and then they'll say, well, we don't have the money for it, and
Yeah.
that's why it's in BAA. So we're gonna reduce, you'll start seeing the purple reduce over time as needed, but when it does increase, it'll be intentional and planned.
Yeah, so the purple now truly reflects the consumption by agency or department.
I think what you'll notice too is ADS has never had a general fund appropriation. So that general fund appropriation is to also mitigate the true cost of core services that the agencies have not been paying for over time. And it is to try to lessen that for them. It is less than a quarter of the total cost of core enterprise services, but I think it represents as a $9 million number on the budget proposal. And then the ADS custom services is what you would have seen as bespoke. So those are IT projects or those unique one-time.
Yeah, ADS customer services are things like the hardware that agencies consume. And it can also be professional services related to a system development or system implementation.
And any project that's not going through the IT model, we would have seen represented under bespoke.
Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The blue there you were just talking about, that seems pretty low to me. Is that, how does that compare to previous years?
That's a great question. It is lower than in past years. So in the past, we were given spending authority for what we assumed would be needed within the various projects as it related to the IT ABC forms that had been executed. This number represents $5 million to support our hardware costs associated with bespoke. It does not include any of those project costs for vendor support that we would bring in for the various projects that the admin was managing.
So where are those other costs?
So the plan is that those other costs will live in other agency and departments' budgets, which they always have lived there. We had spending authority in our internal service fund so that we could pay these vendors and then bill back to customer agencies for those services. The plan, and we still need to map out the details of that plan, but the intention is that those vendors will be paid directly by the customer agency.
Doesn't that kind of go against the kind of systematic approach to IT across department agencies?
It does.
Okay, so this isn't necessarily your recommendation, but this is how it's being proposed.
That's-
Or you don't have to answer that.
Proposed.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, thank you.
Rep. Sabili?
So did the legislature require you to do that?
No.
So are you Assured, have you checked? Do you know if those costs are embedded in all the other department and agencies' budgets, since the budget is now out?
I do not have visibility into that, nor do I personally know if that exists in other agency budgets.
Okay, so let me make sure that I understand what we're talking about here. So you've got the hardware costs in here. And the piece that is not in here that we're presuming but don't know if they are included in the agency and department budgets is the fill in the blank.
The ongoing projects.
The vendor costs related to projects. So when we would need to bring in professional services from a vendor, those costs are not reflected in our budget.
And who's, okay, and so whose responsibility is it? This is a problem.
You might need to.
This is a
revisit this in
problem.
Future.
This is a problem.
So this means we don't really have visibility into the state's IT costs any longer.
We do not at ADS.
Well, we don't in the legislature either.
So I think we can like the schedule. Follow a meeting and maybe that did that here as well. If we were,
Go ahead. So I'm trying to process this. So say there's a monthly fee that needs to be paid. Do the departments pay that, the service fee? Or you're not paying that anymore, right?
27, we will not be paying. So in the past, we would pay for that. If there was a vendor cost, whether it be for deliverables that were provided or for some sort of service fee, we would pay that and then we would bill back our customer agency for those costs. Now, they will bill, the understanding is that they will bill the customer agency directly and not come through ADS.
Okay, but you will still be interacting with that company, so presumably you would know if it didn't get paid, but that's not. Well, hopefully at some point you would know, but that's not ideal for you to know when it's in default or something.
I think a lot of work has to be done. If we were currently on the replacement ERP system, there would be mechanisms in place to have visibility. I have not been able to see that there's a symptom vision, so those would require finance management to provide that information to ADS on a regular basis.
Okay, I guess so you could also tell finance what should be happening, I would think. Right? Okay, we'll talk more.
So, okay. So we have to be on the floor at 3, and I do want to give members a break. So I think that if we have one quick question, clearly we need to get you guys in to committee. So, because we didn't finish your budget requests, and I think there are probably a lot of questions about the FY27 budget now that we're not going to have time to do. That is not a rushed conversation.
Yeah.
So why don't we adjourn? Yeah, do you have one quick
Just
question?
a clarifying question.
Yeah.
I see we have our JFO consultant here. And I just wonder if this is news to our JFO consultant. And if so, if she can kind of do some translation maybe for us at a future date when you decide to take this.
Yeah,
up, Chair.
I don't like rushing conversations, and this is important. So I'd really rather give Lisa a beat.
Yep.
To,
Understand the impacts.
yeah, so.
Yep.
Okay, so, great, so we have to be on the floor at 3, so why don't we adjourn? And, our committee assistant will reach out to schedule a budget, conversation with you guys.
Thank you.
Great, all right, so we can go off live.